Getting you primed for Georgia's national championship attempt, trying to go back-to-back against TCU. But first, let's look back at the Peach Bowl, Georgia's win over Ohio State. I'm Dayne Young, that's Brent Rollins, and we co-author Film Don't Lie from UGAsports.com. Brent's background, a bit more data, a bit more of the coaching. I'm the media and the video stuff, and I tell bad jokes. And this particular episode, you may get more of my voice because Brent's physical voice not quite as strong as it normally is. As I'm glad you're feeling better after some holiday illness, but you're gonna bring your best.
Feeling great. My voice is really bad. I'm going for the Barry White, like the very deep voice tonight.
So this is Baritone Don't Lie from UGAsports.com. Let's talk about Georgia's offense here because it was needed in big ways to make a comeback in the Peach Bowl and give Georgia a chance to go back-to-back. As I bring up Georgia's clips that we're looking at offensively, Brent, just your overall stance of what Georgia did on offense and what it was forced to do on offense late in the game.
Well, they did what they normally do, which is, get a ton of yards. I mean, what's amazing when you look back through the numbers, it doesn't feel that way because the game went such back and forth in the pace. But it was like 8.8 yards per play almost. I mean, they had the least number of plays they run, tied for the Georgia Tech game. So the efficiency with which they worked was insane. And what's even better is you get, like, these are the two highest paid assistant coaches in college football, Monken and Knowles on Ohio State, their defense. And it was, sort of mano-a-mano, and Ohio State's still struggling on that side of the ball, but just super efficient. I mean, I did an Ohio State podcast before the game as well, and I'm like, look, like, what stops Georgia? I'm like, Georgia stops Georgia. And it was the same thing in this game, like 2 missed field goals, interception, other sort of red zone type issues. But outside of that, just a phenomenal job of offense and really got whatever they want almost.
I love this first play that we're going to look at, and it's the touchdown to Kenny McIntosh. Kenny Mac here. The entire bet on this play ends up being that Kenny McIntosh can get to a spot with good blocking faster than this guy, which is pretty darn brilliant when you think about it, because, like, obviously Kenny McIntosh is going to be a better athlete than an interior defensive lineman. But as we get this play going, Mac goes in motion over here. I will say this kind of play is very much predicated on Big O being the guy over here. And I think that if he's unable to play, you see some of this a little bit less.
Yeah, and then also with Ohio State, as soon as you see the motion, like, I'm sitting there thinking in my head, it's screen. But with the way Ohio State's edge rushers moved up the field, like, the fact that 44, JT did not get his hand on the ball, instead, gets it out quick, is great, because they come up the field so much, so consistently. That was the big fear for me, much like he did against Penn State. But this is one where, and obviously blocking is going to be a topic, especially when we get to Ohio State's offense. But hey, Tate got away with one here, and then he pancaked the guy. And he just in a little bit, boom, grabs, and then pancakes him. But what Mims does here is just, I am a bigger human than everyone out here, and I'm going to throw you little toys out of the way. And how he moves, like, he doesn't look like 6'7", 330, and he's like, oh, hey, little guy, see ya.
His high school tape was like that when he was at Bleckley County. Like, he had high school tape where he was just bowling over people from West Lawrence, which I like to say because I went to East Lawrence, and so that was always a delight for me.
Well, it's great play call, great play in general, and, like, Mims, we're going to talk about Mims a lot because he just played phenomenal. He showed that he's a future first-round pick.
The other, I think, probably a potential future first-round pick, Broderick Jones, really fleet of foot here. Like, he stays, doesn't get over his skis, as they like to say sometimes, and he gets out here and gets in the way, and that's exactly what you're supposed to do. I think the combination of Broderick Jones and then Darnell Washington on this play just makes the blocking all the more effective because those are essentially 2 left tackles.
I was saying, think about what you just said. You said Broderick, Darnell. I pointed out Mims. Like, that's 3 first-round picks likely.
Yeah.
And by the way, 2nd and 17. That's the other thing that this, to me, was an indicator that this was a screen. This was 2nd and 17.
So overall, great play. Kenny McIntosh, a guy I think will be in the NFL for a long time. The position is not a high pick or anything. He
He's a
does so
top
many things
100
well.
guy. Top 100 guy.
So the next play here, Stetson Bennett coming to the line of scrimmage, talking to
I
his
think
team.
12 is the indicator here, the guy at the bottom of the screen, because this is one of the things that, from a game plan perspective, what did we talk about prior to the game? How aggressive Ohio State was going to be, how much all their safeties were within 8-9 yards of the line of scrimmage. They didn't do that this game. They played a lot more zone, a lot more, and what we're talking about here, this is Tampa too. Like they cover 3 stuff. And Stetson does a phenomenal job here of keeping his eyes on Bowers, because what he does there, keeping his eyes on Bowers, knowing where he's going with the football, keeps the safety that's hanging around the 42-yard line keeps him from dropping back into play. Because once he does that, he knows he has Arian. Because look at the middle linebacker. That's 35, who does a phenomenal job getting back to even close to being in the play because of Arian's speed. But that's just an insane ask. And, great throw, great play. And Arian being in this offense and actually being utilized in this offense makes it a whole nother world.
Arian's so fast that anytime that I see this space, and look, we're on the all 22, so it looks a little bit worse from this angle. Like the TV copy, it looked like pretty normal coverage. If I see all of this and I see Arian Smith with this room at the line of scrimmage, I'm saying go every time, and
it's much like
make the throw.
Yeah, later in the game, like he eats up the space so fast that it makes defenders do things that they aren't used to doing, and but this is just shot play, great play. You're rolling.
A couple of different options on this play. Obviously, it worked out, but by the end of it, you had a few things kind of cutting open. But and look, this protection, phenomenal. Wasn't greatest all game, and Stetson sometimes double clutched or held it too long, or it seemed like he was a little bit hesitant and didn't want to make mistakes. Right here, perfect. I mean, you can't do better than that.
Yep, this is great play.
Next up,
first time all year they use this formation, and we talked about Ohio State playing zone. I was shocked that they didn't have Turf Monster, that they didn't have a zone check here, because so many teams do this in college football, and they play it like it's a passing formation, because you got the top, like if you go back to the snap, Ladd and I think it's AD are on the line of scrimmage. Ladd is an ineligible receiver. Like he can't go out for a pass. He's covered up because you've got the other guys in the backfield. So because I was thinking zone check. Well, then as soon as they run the jet motion and he runs with him, it's floodgates. Now you're sort of not necessarily numbers disadvantage, but your leverage disadvantage. And great work from the interior line, everybody from Willock at the right guard all the way to Broderick at left tackle. Great double up to the backer, and then it's just there's nobody there. There's straight nobody there because of what the formation did. This was a film study. What does Ohio State do against certain formations? All right, we're going to add one little wrinkle, as opposed to maybe Ladd being at the bottom of the screen.
I do get a bit frustrated with people saying, well, Brock Bowers is not even doing anything in this game. And I'm like, no, he's doing everything. It's like Ohio State their entire goal was to stop. We're not going to get beat by Brock Bowers. And so he was running players off of situations. He was blocking a ton. And when he runs here, and like you said, here follows this way, look at where the space is. As long as you get past the line of scrimmage, you're golden.
The combo block, though, you got Broderick at left boom, and the Truss does a good job getting his hips turned. What we always talk about, sort of once that guy goes, get your butt and your head turned. Sawyer gets out of 33, gets out of position a little bit, but then Willock and then SVP Van Pran working up the combo. Willock does a great job of getting turned as well. Van Pran hits him, and then it's just open up floodgates.
We'll talk about TCU in a separate video. I think Georgia is going to really be leaning on that offensive line in the run game against TCU. One, to keep the defense fresh, because that was one thing early in this game of like defense was out there a lot against Ohio State in the first half. And so what can the offense do to sustain more drives?
It's amazing. Like you think about that game of how much scoring it was and what the pace seemed like. But like Ohio State ran 71 plays. It wasn't like that was a 85, 90 plays type game. They ran 71, I think it was. Like but it just I think it's the emotion of the game combined with the series, the game itself, Georgia being down, so now you're straining more. I think that hurt the defense just as much as anything.
Some of that, and also just like, look, they're running more because the field is being stretched more, and so total running.
And by the way, I forgot Kenny Mack, longest run of the season now by 1 yard, 52. He beat Milton's 51.
Kenny Mack not in the game here. They send Dayne Edwards out wide, which should be your indication that he's not going to receive the ball here, or probably shouldn't.
Well, this is the point. I think this is maybe even the early third quarter where we're getting this. And you just see a lot of not pulling the trigger from Stetson. And he went through, I think it was the end of the second quarter through till he completed a screen to Kenny Mack at the end of the third quarter without a passing yard. I mean, he had 400 yards and went in a whole quarter of the game without a passing yard.
Yeah.
Here, ideally, Bowers comes off of this and instantly has his head looking for the football. But it's clearly the route combo is not designed for that. Because, like, right there, boom, throw it to him. But this is, a little mesh with somebody over the ball action. But just he didn't pull the trigger here. And there was a time in that game where you just felt like he felt the weight of the game a little bit and was pressing.
My thought is when he sees this fall back over here to help in coverage, if I'm Stetson, I'm thinking run early here. And I'm frankly, Georgia, I think, needs to hope that he's running a bit more against TCU. It's his last college game. Like, what do you have to lose? But if he's thinking kind of scramble from here, I mean, yeah, there's not a whole lot of space right in front of him, but like this is going to be a positive gain. Either if you come around the edge or I just want him to run here, knowing where all these defenders are downfield. I want to think run more.
I mean, in the game coming up, I mean, I thought he'd have a ton of rushing yards in this game, but Ohio State also played a little differently defensively.
Yeah,
they didn't truly rush with the wide, and like you see it a little bit here, but not really that true wide 9 technique that we consistently saw from them all the time on film.
Even when he steps up in the pocket right here, go
right there, that or throw the ball right there.
Yeah, there's multiple things you can do on the line that I
100%.
Some play action game here. This was beautiful to Bowers,
and this is one where Ohio State's defense, to me, this was their issue defensively the entirety of the season. Just discipline. The safety has the guy that's right by the umpire in the middle. Massively bites on the run, on the guard pull sort of run fake. And he really has no business doing that. No business being that aggressive. We talked about this before the game, how downhill their second level played and how much we thought play action, this type of play would be there. But, if it wasn't sort of in a cover 2 type deal, they stayed in cover 3. And when you get those underneath defenders, those sort of middle hole defenders that are pulling up, it's easy money over top of them.
That was about the easiest throw that Stetson Bennett made the whole game.
Yeah, well, there was one easier one. He just flooded it up pretty bad.
Yeah. Here's the deep shot to Arian Smith that we talked about earlier. And yeah, Ohio State's guy fell down, but I would also fall down if I was trying to catch up to Arian Smith. That's
what I mentioned earlier. When speed like that, like different level track, true, like insane level speed climbs on you that fast like that, your movements, you speed your movements up that little bit, and that's what causes you to fall. It's not the turf monster there. It's just, and the beautiful part about Arian's earlier catch, and I think I've seen this whole year. he's not just a track guy playing football. Like, he actually can adjust and see and gets his hands where they need to be to make plays. But here, just go be fast, dude. Just go be fast.
I've had receivers tell me that these are some of the hardest catches to make just because you have so much time to think about
And
it.
because you're wide open. And
And
the importance of scoring instantly right here. Like, it completely changed the dynamic of the last part of the game versus you having to maybe take 2-3 minutes off the clock to score that touchdown.
we talked about a lot of potential plays of the game, and we're just kind of combining them all together into this video. But this is probably the first one that each of us thought about. But there were some others as well.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking
of the easiest pass.
Yeah, down to the red zone and this little.
He did it twice. Like, the interception, he pulled the string. Like, the interception at that last moment, Kenny Mack is sort of inside of the defender, and then he tilts outside. So Stetson's like, he kind of pulls back at that last second versus just kind of letting it go. And I also think there was an offensive line issue in that play. We'll save that for another day. But like here, he just pulls the string a little bit, kind of, and this was one I'm sure like every Georgia fan sitting there is like, we're on the 3, and now we're on the what?
Well, they need to be more grateful because if Lad McConkey does not corral this ball, and this is an injured Lad McConkey, like he is fighting through some
one little bounce the other way. Like if it bounces towards the goal line, I mean,
look at this. Look at what's coming this way. There's no Georgia help here. If
those guys are frothing at the mouth.
If he does not corral this football, Georgia loses.
Yes.
It is Ohio State versus TCU, and it's because this football squirted a different way. And that was like one of 4 or 5 things that had to go Georgia's way for it to get back in the game. And yeah, this was a critical mistake from Stetson Bennett, and it's a critical save from Lad McConkey. There's nothing in the stat book that's going to say this is impressive. It's one of the most impressive things in the game.
And that's like we talked about, and I've mentioned that sort of big game Bennett, Stetson playing great in the big games this season. This was the first one where he's played really well, but he also had sort of those flashback moments where it's like, all right, not letting it rip, or, plays like that, just little things here or there where you just don't see the, Mr. Mike drop confidence guy. You see hesitating guy, and he can't be that. It's not him. It's not who he is.
While I am throwing praise at McConkey, this is the 2-point conversion, which if you look at the margin of victory, this was critical as well to avoid overtime because this is what ends up being a winning play here. The route running combination of McConkey and A.D. Mitchell here, they're working in a phone booth. Look at this.
How they don't knock each other off is trip each other up somehow. Yep. I mean, the little hesitation from Ladd just to let AD clear is impressive. And the throw, by the way, the throw was impressive too, because all that's right in his face. Like they blitz right in his face. You move the pocket thinking that you can get away from that, but it actually kind of runs into it in a way. And
we talk about that, just like the attention that Bowers demands. Look at this on a 2-point play where then that leaves Georgia with this situation that Stetson obviously takes advantage of. But I'm telling you, like, this is such a thin little margin that if a foot gets tripped up somehow, then Georgia doesn't get this, and it loses 2 points. And
who knows? There's so many there's so many what ifs in this game. I mean, much like the national championship game against Bama, where you're thinking, what if this? What if Keely Ringo doesn't chase down Cameron Latu? Like all these little things. Like in this game, what if when Ringo hits that fumble, like that somebody just picks it up versus everybody diving on it and kicking it? There's so many in this game.
Amarius Mims here too. Another shove. Whoop.
14 and 12 did not enjoy when they came around him, that's for sure.
All right, let's get to the nitty gritty here.
watching this throw live this to me live was just one of his sort of jaw-dropping throws, because this, he put some serious revolutions on it, had to drop down 3/4 side army to fit through the window, and the millimeter that was missed of the ball being knocked out of his hand by the rusher. Just, that's when you kind of felt like, okay, here we go. The tide has truly turned.
I think it's also a really good route here that we need to give credit for, just because Bauer's having to see, one, where this guy goes, how far does this drop back? And when he sees that, he's like, I'm camping out right here. Toss me the ball.
I mean, it's the same thing we talked about earlier. It's how they're playing their sort of cover three consistently, by the way. Notice I've mentioned that a lot. Well, guess who else probably notices that? All the offensive staff that is sitting in the booth. Like, when you're getting things consistently, and that's what's kind of shocking with Ohio State, is that because of the way they play their defense, they could disguise and do a lot more things from a coverage perspective. They just don't. And even before this game, they'd been a lot more, and we talked about it before the game, how aggressive, man-oriented, that type of stuff they were. Not so much in this game.
So they get Georgia to midfield pretty quickly. This gets them down to the red zone even quicker. Kyrus Jackson.
So we've talked about cover three a little bit, and we talked about the cover two. Same thing. Cover two hole right there. Perfectly placed ball. You put it a little too far, sort of up the field a little bit, you might bring that safety back into play. You try to drop it in the bucket, you might bring the trail there. So put it over the shoulder where he's not going to see the ball coming right there over his left shoulder. That's just, somebody, they might say that's easy. Like somebody, an Ohio State person might look at that and be like, that's too easy. That's just good throws. It's just good offense and great offense, just much like we saw from Ohio State. Oftentimes you can't guard it.
For whatever reason, the beautiful part of Stetson Bennett's game, of the very decisive, the gunslinger that people want to talk about, it just emerges in these high-stakes games in the fourth quarters. He's been spectacular.
Yes.
Like almost flawless. And this is high quality. And everything about it just exudes confidence that is unearned from much of what we had seen previously in this game, earned from his total body of work. But as you said, we just saw more double clutches, more boneheaded mistakes, a lot of great plays too. But like, it was only great plays by the whole fourth quarter. And
what was he, 10 of 12 for like 190 in the fourth quarter, I think. I mean, it just insane. And I wrote about this after the game, but a lot of sort of these unsung heroes, like Kyrus making this big catch, Don Blaylock early in the game on a slot fade in a contested catch situation, picks up the third down. All of these other sort of ancillary players that have, especially the veteran guys around, making big plays in this game. Also
having A.D. Mitchell come back into the fold, which there was a route early in the game. It seemed like he and Stetson were not on the same page at all. And
because Stetson should have been looking at Brock in that one. Go back. But anyway, yes, you're right.
There were multiple plays, though, where A.D. Mitchell looked like he just jumped back in and was ready to be what he was in the national championship game last year. And this is right there among them, because this is beautiful.
I mean, I think we mentioned this consistently with him. When you have that guy who defenses have to pay attention to, that as a sort, not necessarily maybe, at least they feel like the number one guy, everything else falls into line. And the matchups that you get sort of down the line because of that make your offense that much better. Much like a pitching rotation, much like your top guy on the basketball team. When you have your guy especially on the outside, it opens up the entirety of the field. Like you saw early, like they got it whatever they want early. And then Ohio State settled into the game a little bit.
This is another route combination that they end up pretty darn close together because of this shove here from Ohio State, which is, it's legal. I'm not saying it isn't. Like, you can always play defense closer to the line. Yeah.
And great anticipation throw. Just
great anticipation throw and just really good route running. AD Mitchell, since he got to Georgia, has this little head fake thing that his whole body flows with, and he's been shaking people since last year.
He's sudden. Like, he's very sudden with his movements.
That kind of thing will have you playing in the league for a while.
I mean,
position.
And, national championship and a playoff game, he's caught the go-ahead touchdown. That's a pretty good first 2 years.
Overall, Georgia's offense, anything that we didn't get to show that you saw on tape that stood out to you? Because I know a lot of people were saying, you only showed the passing plays. You didn't show some of the running stuff. And, yeah, you're right, because that was the story of the game. Georgia didn't run quite as efficiently other than what we showed you.
Well, the backs were insane. I think the backs themselves were almost 10 yards a carry because of some of the bigger plays, like Dayne's, bouncing off of people and getting plays, and then Kenny Mack's run. But the biggest thing I think watching is, and what might come into play the next game, I think what translates to the next game, is there's going to come a time in this next game where Stetson's going to have to trust Brock Bowers is winning and throw it based upon that trust, because there were at least 3 that I counted where big play opportunities were there. If he just gives it that extra count or that extra little bit of faith and trust in Brock, and I'm not saying that he doesn't do that all the time, but it's going to be really important because of what TCU has and how good TCU is on the outside of corner. Like, the middle of the field is going to be where the football games is decided against TCU. And like I said, 2 or 3 plays, he's going to have to trust that Brock is just going to go win, because he did in this game. I think there was one, I can't remember, but it was down. The throw was sort of down to the side. I think he quickly dumped it off to Dayne, and he missed it. Like, it was like one-handed or something like that. If he waits another half count, that's a touchdown to Brock in the corner of the end zone. But it's one of those things where he looks at it and you can tell that he's looking at it, seeing that he's basically covered, and he then processes the next step versus let me just hang on Brock that extra count. I think that's going to be key in the national championship.
And I think it's pretty obvious that defensive coordinators are taking away the gimmies to Bowers, because you saw they tried to get him the ball on a sweep one time, and Ohio State was completely ready for it, and there was nothing doing there. And some of the little quick throws. I agree with you that I think the passes to Bowers are going to be things that are going to be down the field and give him a chance to show that catch radius and that leaping ability that he's done so well at Georgia. And the path to that is easier for Bowers if Darnell Washington plays. I think that is without a doubt. And there's been so much chatter, mainly from Ohio State people, fans, and media, and sometimes I can't discern the difference on that particular beat, where they've been saying that, like, if Ohio State has Marvin Harrison that whole game, they win. It's very similar to the Alabama conversation. And what I can't overstate is that when Darnell Washington went out of the game, Georgia's offense was different. Like, so much of the offense is predicated on that guy being a tight end who can do some receiver things and do a lot of offensive lineman things. And when you bring in anyone else on the team, really anyone else in the country, you don't have that.
No, and that's it's fascinating for this week in the preparation for the game on Monday. Like, are you preparing as if he's going to play? And you're going to be in certain personnel pack because you're a 50 to 60% 12 personnel team.
Yeah. Like, and look, that's not a slight to Oscar Delp. I hope that doesn't come off that way. Oscar Delp played pretty darn well coming into his role.
Darnell's a different animal.
Oscar Delp, he's not LeBron James. He's not that size. That's what I'm saying. That's it. And that's a fact.
100%. But I agree. It's fascinating to see if he plays. I tend to think he will.
Yeah, that's kind of the early indications that tea leaves in the realm that I have too. All right.
8 yards of play, 530 yards offense again. They did what they do.
If you're just finding us, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We're the most popular Georgia Bulldogs YouTube channel. Talk about a lot of other teams and really anything in the SEC. I have a TCU preview coming up. We'll also talk about Georgia's defense, maybe some of the things that need to try to improve in a short amount of time before another good quarterback and some more good skill players. We'll talk about it all. Thanks for watching Film Don't Lie.